Hi, and welcome to the Becoming Trauma-Informed podcast, where we help you understand how your past painful experiences are affecting your current reality and how you can shift those so you can create your desired future. I'm Dr. Lee, and both myself and our team at the Institute for Trauma and Psychological Safety are excited to support you on your journey. We talk about all the things on this podcast. No topic gets left uncovered. So, extending a content warning to you before we get started. If you notice yourself getting activated while listening, invitation to take care of yourself and to pause, skip ahead a bit, or just check out another episode. Let's dive in. Hey everybody, welcome to this week's episode. Today's really special because I have, oh my gosh, this woman fills so many roles in my life. I'm going to let her introduce herself, and I'm going to just selfishly tell you who she is to me first. So this woman is, oh gosh, my ride or die. She's my bulldog when I am being way too much of a softie, and she protects me from mean people on the internet. And she lovingly pokes me to do all the things that I forget to do when I don't look at the to-do list she's made me. And she's a human that we practice petty patty with when we need to say things that we don't want anyone else in our lives to hear, and they need to just be in a protected space. And she also is the Pepper Potts to my Tony Stark at the Institute. And she's a good human. So I'm going to let her tell you about her business, because in addition to being our operations director at the Institute, she also runs her whole ass business, which is just wild. So without further ado, the one and only Sarah Kahn.
Oh my gosh, that was like one hell of an intro. Thank you.
Well,
I was sitting over here smiling.
I was like, how have I not had you on yet? And before we get into today's topic, which I'm so stoked to talk about, can you tell us a little bit about your business?
Yes. So I am the founder, CEO, head honcho of Corporate Rehab Strategic Consulting. My official title is Chief Ease Officer and How Whisperer. And I work with high-achieving women who have either left the traditional workplace or desire to, and now they're taking up space as entrepreneurs. And I bring my 20 plus years of experience in the areas of operations, growth strategy, leadership development, and basically now help liberate women from the hustle-focused status quo of entrepreneurship to find the simplest path from where they are now to where they want to be, with no BS, no fluff, just let's get to the goods and get you where you want to be.
Yes, I concur. You do all of those things. You do. You know, sometimes you hear people's intros and you're like, really? Do they do all that? Yes, she does. You know, I was actually thinking back because one of my clients is hiring their first OBM, their first online business manager. And she was like, do you have a hire sheet or like an advert that you put out? And I was like, no, because here's what happened. I went in a group asking for help about how to hire an OBM, and Sarah responded and very graciously just like hopped on the phone with me for a whole hour and was like, this is what you need. This is what, you know, where you're at the level you're at your business. This is what I would recommend. And at the end of it, I was like, can I hire you?
I remember
you said
that.
No. You said no at first. She was like, nope, I'm full. And I was like, well, oh, okay. And then I think it was like a week or two later, you were like, actually, I'm not full anymore. And let's talk.
Yeah, I remember that. And it's weird. I'm going to toot my own horn a little bit here, because what you see in the online space a lot is take everybody. Don't ever say no, because, you know, you lose a client. And it's like, well, if I was at full capacity and I took you on as another client, I'm doing you a huge disservice. Mm-hmm. Right? And it just doesn't make any sense to me. So I'm glad that it worked out, though.
It was truly, I talk a lot about the universe, God, source, whatever you want to refer to it as. I respect your beliefs. And I feel like that was such divine timing, because if I had known you were going to be on the phone for an hour with me, I don't know that I would have even said yes, because at that point, I don't know that I would have allowed myself to receive that much help with like no expectation in return.
Mm-hmm.
which is something I want to talk about. And just from the beginning, I feel like we've been able to be really well boundaried while also be able to hold multiple roles with each other, which I feel like is very rare in the online space with people who collaborate. And your expertise really is in helping entrepreneurs understand how they are bringing the residue, right? You know, in the trauma world, we talk about residue, the aftermath, right? Trauma isn't the event, it's the aftermath. And like, bad things happen in the corporate world all the time. Toxic things happen in the corporate world all the time. And the true problem is that it's accepted as normal and there's residue and aftermath that then even if you leave that toxic environment and you're like, I'm going to start my own business, you bring it with you.
Oh, 100%. 100%. That's so true. And that's why I brought this in to what I do as a service provider, because when I started my entrepreneurial journey, and I'm a reluctant entrepreneur, I never wanted to be a work for myself kind of person. I was happy to go into work, do what I was good at, collect a paycheck, come home, not think about it. But things just, I mean, it's a story for another day, but things just got so bad, particularly over the pandemic, that for my own mental health, I had to leave. And it was with a lot of grief and, you know, there's a lot of feelings around that. But what I noticed was in the first year probably of my business, I was treating it exactly like I had treated my job. I was getting up every single day at 5 o'clock. I was sitting at my desk at 8 o'clock. And if I was later than 8 o'clock, I would have all this guilt because I was wasting time. I would eat my lunch at my desk in only 30 minutes. And then I'd stay at my desk until 4. And if I didn't, you know, finish, I would come back after the kids were in bed. Like it was really, because that is how I had been trained for pretty much my entire career to define productivity, to define my worth. Like if I'm not sitting at my desk and showing that I'm a team player, that I'm dedicated, that I'm committed, you know, I wasn't doing my job, quote unquote job.
I forgot that you were still working a little bit in corporate academia when we started working together. We were both still working in, you know, I separate out healthcare, academia, corporate. It's all corporate. It's all capitalistic.
Yes.
I'm not going to add another word at the end of that because it's not going to be nice. But like, I like that you say reluctant entrepreneur, because I think a lot of humans become entrepreneurs, not because like they hated the work they were doing or because they didn't find value in the service they were providing or the support they were giving. It was just that like the structure of it itself was so conformed to this, or you're out.
Yeah.
Like I remember you talking about your experience with like a kiddo being sick or something like that. And
oh God, yeah. I remember so this is my older one. She's 14 now. So this was a while ago, but I can tell you a story from almost every sort of era and every job that I've been in that's similar to this. She had croup. So she had whooping cough, and she was maybe 4 or 5 at the time. She obviously couldn't go to school. I was working as a project manager for a major telecommunications company at this time. And she was not able to go to daycare. And so I'd worked it out with my boss. I said, I will work from home. You know, before work from home was really a big thing.
Yeah.
Brought my laptop. They gave me like secure keys and all these things. So I logged into every single meeting. I attended, you know, all the conference calls. We didn't have Zoom at the time. It was like literal, you know, those conference call pods that sit on tables. It was terrible.
Oh God, I hated those.
I know, they were so awful. And then I did all of my status reports, and I literally worked the entire day with my kid in my lap for an entire week, for the full week. And Friday comes around and I had a meeting with my boss, and she said, you know, we're going to do a status check, make sure that everything's been done. Had the meeting. Everything was done. I was on track. It's like I had never left the office. And she turned around to me and she said, this has come down from the director, but we're actually going to dock your salary this week because since you're working from home, you're not technically working. And I could not wrap my head around that. And it was because they felt that because I would probably be dividing my time between actually working and looking after my kiddo, that I wasn't there, quote unquote, full time. And, that's another really toxic belief that we have around, when I say corporate, it's like you said, I don't talk about just corporate America. I'm talking about the traditional workplace, right? The 9 to 5, because that corporate mentality seeps into everything. And so this idea that just because I'm looking after my kid as well, got all my tasks done, nothing was left undone, but I wasn't working full time, apparently.
Did you ever see that episode of Family Matters? Does everyone remember Family Matters?
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Yeah, gosh, I love that show. As a person of color, that show just meant so much to me because it was like,
Yeah.
I remember there's an episode where Harriet Winslow decides to go back to work. And her boss is like, well, why would I? And she's like, let me tell you about everything that I have done as a mom that actually makes me the perfect human to be here. And part of it is like, I can do in a fifth of the time what most people can, because that's what my life has had to be.
You learn to be efficient with your time.
Heck yeah, you do. And I actually think that is something that I think I remember sharing this with you because I left a few months before you did.
Yeah.
Right? And I remember I actually started having a ton of trouble getting stuff done, which was so surprising to me because I was like, I now am working 30 hours instead of 80. So why am I having so much trouble getting things done? And it was because I was so used to having pressure everywhere of like, if you don't do this right now, it's not happening.
Well, it's that idea of, again, right, like 9 to 5, you have to be constantly working. Oh my gosh, it probably took me more than 2 years to get over that. Like just this idea of if you're not constantly busy, if you have like downtime, breathing space, you're forgetting something. You're not doing something. Like I was constantly gaslighting myself that I'm missing something. And even like I'm much better at it now, but even now, even today, January this year was a super busy month for me, like super busy. I onboarded a new client. I've got, the kids and like kids are back to school. It's been bananas crazy. And it's terrifying a little bit how easily you fall back into that. I'm going to work from 9 to 5. I'm going to give the kids dinner. I'm going to, get back to my desk. I'm going to take my laptop up to the bedroom and work while my husband's sleeping. Like it's so easy to fall back into that. And then last week when things finally started to take a break and get easy again, and I didn't have like this crazy busy schedule, again, all of those thoughts of like, I'm forgetting to do something. This feels uncomfortable. Why do I not have something to do? And so you're making busy work for yourself. And that is 100%, again, residue from the traditional workplace. And this idea that, like, did you ever, you're standing around the water cooler, so to speak, and a supervisor walks by and they're like, what are you guys doing? Why are you standing around? Like there was always this questioning of, you're not busy right now. Why is that? Do you need more work?
Yeah. So something I noticed is I was on night shift for several years. I had 40 patients a night, which is just
that's insane.
It's just like when I say that out loud now, I'm like, yeah, I worked a 20-hour shift out taking care of 40 people at a time. It was fine. It was great. But to be fair, sometimes they really actually were. It was chill. And I remember, so on night shift, the expectations of you are completely different. It's keep everybody alive. Don't rock the boat. Don't try anything new because the team's already had a 2-hour discussion about how this patient should be taken care of. So like, we don't really want your ideas. We don't really want you switching stuff up. We just like maintain the status quo, keep everyone alive, tuck anybody new in who comes in. If anybody tries to die, sorry, that was like very flippant, but like truly, if anybody starts crashing, do what you need to get them to where they need to be to when the team comes in. It was a very much like just keep everyone afloat role. And there were times that I had downtime and I'm like, before I would have gone in and looked at patients' charts and asked them different questions and like looked at their med list and gone, oh, can we do something? And literally they were like, we don't want you to do that. We do not want you to quote unquote improve anything. And it was just so wild to me. And a lot of people would be like, that's a fabulous job. Like, you just show up and make sure everyone's good. And like, you can watch Netflix, you can take naps. That was the other piece. So I had like, it was very weird. It was like everything we taught you actively not to do for the first several years of you being a nurse practitioner, we want you to do the opposite now. And it kind of like, I was like, well, this is great. This is cushy. I'm getting paid well, all of that. And also, okay. And there were, there were just like constant feelings of, is this really what I do? Is this all that I do? And also so much guilt around the times that I was relaxed, that there wasn't anything going on. Like, can I just really sit here? Is this okay? Can I really lay down and take a nap? That I'm allowed to sleep while I work? I don't know. I don't think I've ever really shared that before, but it was just, and then when I went back to day shift for a little bit, that was wild because my time management skills with 40 humans were off the charts at that point. And so I'm done with my work by 1 p.m. and just sitting there and I'm like, can I go home? And they're like, no, because your patients might need something. And I'm like, this is dumb.
I remember that. I remember having a manager who would actively walk the floor every morning at 9:00 to make sure everyone was in their cubes, and would then pop their head into everyone's cubes or offices at like 4:15 because we finished at 4:30.
Yeah.
And they wanted to see who was still there. And I mean, I was the same. Most of my work was finished by 1:00 in the afternoon. And so I would spend the rest, like the next 3 hours, either creating work for myself, helping colleagues, or surfing the internet. And there were days when I like finished the internet because literally had nothing to do. But you had to sit there. You had to sit there because you were required to be there from, 9 to 5 or 9 to 4 or whatever it was. It's so inefficient.
And it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. Like, it's different than you being a cashier or somebody who needs to be there in case somebody comes in. Like, and that's what I started to tell myself is I was like, I'm here in case somebody comes in. I'm here in case something goes wrong. I'm not here proactively. I'm actually here reactively. And that just feels different than what I'm used to. And when I noticed that when I left and was in my own business, it was actually really hard to kind of shift back to a proactive mindset. It wasn't, you have to wait till the last minute to get everything done, or, you have to wait for someone else to tell you what to do. It was, no, like, you actively get to make all the decisions now. And as much as I loved that, it was also really hard to be a good boss to myself because.
Yeah. Well, it's one of the things that I tell a lot of my clients is that, when you start entrepreneurship, a lot of people are like, I want that time freedom. I want that time freedom. Time freedom will jack you the fuck up 100%, especially if you are used to being constantly busy or, having to punch a clock or be accountable for your time. And it happened to me too, right? This idea of, oh, wow, I can actually work whenever I want to and I can do whatever I want. I mean, I still, to this day, 4 years on, I still struggle with reactivity. A message comes through, it's that I have to respond to it right away.
Oh, I know.
Right? You know, exactly.
I know.
And it's like, you don't have to respond. And Lee is great because she will preface her messages with, don't respond to this until Monday. And sometimes I will be like, but I have to see if it's urgent,
I don't say don't respond to this. I say don't read this. Don't listen to this until Monday.
I know. And I'm terrible.
Well, and I'm going to coach you right here and be like,
absolutely.
You're not terrible. Before we came on here and actually hit record, we were talking about what do we want to really focus on today. And I really think it's the piece of validating people who have come from this very capitalistic corporate, this term just, I can't stand it. Human capital. You are human capital. Mm-hmm. To, okay, I'm going to run my own business and I'm going to be my own boss. Well, if you've only ever had bosses that, like you said, micromanage, that say you have to stay at your desk till 5, that gaslight, that invalidate, that tell you, hey, we don't actually want your brilliance. We want your mediocrity.
Yes. Toe the party line, please.
Yeah, like we're not. One of the things that always cracked me up was when companies would say something like, our standard is that you go above and beyond expectations. And I'm like, no, that's if the expectation is that you go above and beyond, then what you are saying is mediocrity in your company is excellence.
Mm-hmm.
And that, like that, you're literally creating an oxymoron for your humans.
There's a huge disconnect in what we're asked to do and what we're allowed to do in the workplace.
Yeah.
And when you become an entrepreneur, you bring that with you, right?
Yeah.
I mean, there are so many conversations about over deliver, under promise, blah, blah, blah. It's like, why can't you just do what you say you're going to do? Like, why is there all this rhetoric around promise this, but deliver this, and you've got to prove your worth, and you got to this and price this. And I mean, there's so much that still comes in from that corporate capitalistic mindset. And like the other day, so I have a podcast. And so the other day I recorded an episode talking about an experience I had about like, why I left corporate, what the situation was, how my manager had micromanaged me and like into a mental health crisis. And I had to preface it after I listened to it myself and say, I don't actually blame a lot of managers or supervisors for treating, quote unquote human capital the way they do, because they are not taught any differently either, right? They are just as much victims of the system. And when you are promoted into positions of management, a lot of the time it's because you've worked there the longest, or you've put in the most hours, or you know the right people. And it's not because you understand how to motivate a team, you understand how to, get the best out of your people. There's very little, if any, human training that goes along with management training. It's always like, here's the policies and procedures you need to uphold. And so they're just perpetuating this bullshit capitalist system. And they get blamed for a lot of stuff, and it deepens that divide. And so there's a lot of managers that I knew as human beings who were incredibly wonderful human beings. Yeah. And I would count them as friends. But as bosses, they were awful.
Yeah. Okay, so two things that I pulled out of that. Number one, and I want to say this, because when we're talking about how awful capitalism is great. Like, do not get me wrong. I am not on this podcast going like, let's get rid of money and all go live on. I mean, here's the thing. Like, if I feel like that could happen, if I feel like we could do that as humans, I'd be all about it. It's not currently feasible. Let's just say it that way. The thing that I am referring to is are the pieces inside of this system that are treating humans as products, that are treating humans as all the same, right?
Mm-hmm.
That are using shame and guilt and scarcity and all of these things that just like, even as I'm saying those words, I'm like, ugh, right? Like, we both run businesses. We both have successful businesses. We both have people pay us a lot of money to do what we do. Mm-hmm. And the people who pay us are like, oh my goodness, I love paying you. I love the way this feels. I love the way I'm taken care of. And I just really don't see at the larger organizational scale, corporate scale, that mutually beneficial focus. Mm-hmm. It's not, we're going to make sure that you as our employees, this is really good for you. And we trust that you're also going to like want to make sure that this is really good for us too. It's how do we manipulate you as employees to get what we need out of this? What do you want? What can we give you that'll make you produce more, that'll help you show up more? And also, like, there's just not, even if individuals in the systems, like most people who become managers, mm-hmm. really care about other people. And again, they don't have the emotional intelligence skills. They haven't been taught about trauma. They haven't been taught about, there's humans out there that aren't made to be, that aren't just inherent white collar office workers that like need different things. So when these humans go, okay, I really don't fit into corporate America, I'm gonna start my own business. And then they're like, okay, all of that really didn't feel good. So I'm gonna come over here and create something that's so different a lot of that just like, I almost think about it as, you're in a pool and somebody pees in the pool next to you and you move all the way to the other end of the pool. Guess what?
It's still going to get you.
Right?
Yep.
Like, you have to get out of the pool. And that is something that I think a lot of people don't know. They're like, I got out of the pool. And I'm like, no, you just moved. You just moved over to the other side of the pool and you're pretending that you're good now.
Yep. And it's so interesting. I had a very, very enlightening conversation with a mastermind group that I'm in yesterday. And we were talking about, my evolution from corporate to where I am now. And, in telling the story, and somebody, I can't remember who it was, but somebody said this and it really made me go, oh, wait a second. How many, particularly women, leave the traditional workplace and come into entrepreneurship, not because they necessarily want to be entrepreneurs, but because they're trying to heal their trauma from the workplace. Absolutely. And when they get here and they're basically subjected to pretty much the same behavior from coaches and consultants and team members, and they don't know, you have been bossed your whole career and you come into now corporate and you're a boss. And so many people don't know how to be bosses, don't know how to be managers, don't know how to manage a team, don't know how to talk to the people, deal with conflict. And it's not because you're inherently a bad person or you're incapable. It's because you were never taught any different. You were never modeled any differently. And as much as you may want to come in and be different and do different, until you actually understand what that looks like, until you're able to identify the practices and the beliefs and the behaviors that you grew up in your career thinking was normal, you're not going to be able to change that, and you're just going to perpetuate that in your own business. And so many women specifically that I have spoken to are like, I'm not cut out for this. And it's like, no, you actually are. Here's what we can change. Here's what we need to do differently. Here's what you need to release in order to be able to do what you want to do. And going back to us talking about time freedom, right? When you have been constantly punching the clock and you don't know any differently, your nervous system freaks out when you suddenly have space.
Yes, ma'am.
Happened to me, happened to you, happened to most of us. Yeah.
Yes. There's also, I've shared on here that I got diagnosed with ADHD coming up on close to a year. And there was so much unmasking that I had to do. I left corporate healthcare academia in December of 2020. And, it's been almost 2.5 years and there's still places that I find myself masking. And a lot of that was because I recognized that the way that I showed up, like in my neurodivergence, was not acceptable. Because I always had questions. I always wanted to know why. I always wanted to understand things. And it's what's interesting about nursing is that you're supposed to ask questions. You're supposed to like dig in and find the answers clinically. And you're supposed to completely turn that off when it comes to the policies and procedures that are handed to you of this is how we're going to do things. And if you're like, okay, but why? They're like, because we said so. And I got in trouble like a couple times. I still remember my boss pulling me out of our office and being like, hey, that email that you just sent, like, you can't send an email like that. And I was like, I was just asking a question of why we were doing something a certain way because it's not working. And she's like, yeah, you can't just like outright say that something's not working. And I was like, but it's not. And she's like, yeah, we kind of have to have like back channel conversations around that. Like it just came out really abrasive. And I was like, okay, so I have to kind of just look at how I'm saying things and ensure that I'm not being impulsive in how I'm saying things. I have to think about everything that I say.
Per my last email.
Right?
Yeah.
I was like, oh, I have to use corporate speak here. And I've never learned this. And actually, it's so funny looking back at my life. Like, there's so many distinct places in school, in jobs, where I was like, how did you not know? How did nobody catch on? But I think that a lot of people who are neurodivergent, really get drawn to entrepreneurship as well because they don't feel, because it is a place where you're like, okay, I don't fit over here. And so maybe if I do this on my own, I'll fit. And it really is this journey of like removing all of those like pulling pieces out and looking at them and going, wait, is this me or is this just something I was taught to do? And I think that that's what you help a lot of business owners do. That's what you've actually helped me do. There's been times I was like, oh my gosh, Sarah, I'm late on that deadline. And you're like, you set that deadline. I don't care. Like,
Yeah.
I don't care. Just pick a deadline that actually works for you instead of picking a deadline you think you're supposed to pick.
Yeah.
Do you remember when I was like, hey, I want to keep selling things after the cart closes. Like, I don't want to take down the sales page anymore, like of our offers. And you were like, I love that because I'm over here waiting to know when you want to take this page down and making sure I do it at the exact right time. And I'm worried that I'm like not going to get it done in time. And I just remember going, well, I've been picking a date because I think it'll make Sarah feel better.
See? But that's exactly it. It's just, yeah. Mm-hmm.
I mean, there were so many places where it was like, oh no, I have to not do what feels right for me because I need to make sure that other people
aren't inconvenienced or they, yeah.
Yes, they're not inconvenient, that I'm palatable to other people.
Yes. Yes. And that, again, is what we are taught in traditional workplace settings, particularly as women of color, as mothers, as opinionated humans, right? Like I have stories too of being, scolded and reprimanded for asking questions in the right. There was a point where I actually stopped getting meeting invites to a particular meeting that we would have in the workplace because I was constantly pointing out inefficiencies in what we were trying to do. And if you me, I'm very good at pointing out inefficiencies, and they didn't want to hear it because it would require them to relearn a certain way of doing something, or we would have to cut the team smaller because not that many people needed to be there. And it was just like everyone was constantly trying to pad egos and make sure that everyone felt seen, so long it was seen in the way that they wanted you to be seen and not in a way that you actually deserve to be seen. And I'll never forget, it was in England, actually. I was working there as an instructor at one of the universities, and every Monday we had a meeting, and every Monday they would ask, how can we improve this course? How can we improve this class? One time I piped up and said, well, when I worked at a university in Canada, this is what we did. And it became a running joke after that, right? Oh, well, in Canada.
Answered the question.
Yeah, it was crazy how quickly not only did they make light of my suggestion because it actually would have worked, right? And I was new and I was showing up all the old dogs at the table, but also, well, it's a foreign idea and we don't really like it, and you're also a woman and you're new and we don't want to hear it. And so every time someone made like a silly suggestion, it was like, oh, well, I bet they do that in Canada. Like it became such a moment of like, you've been put in your place. And now every time you open your mouth, we're just going to gaslight you into thinking that what you have to say isn't worth listening to. It's so common and it's so frustrating. And you see it in entrepreneurship too.
If you're listening on the podcast and not watching this, I feel like Stephanie should pull this clip out our social media so you can just see my face right now. I'm like, the very non-trauma informed response I'm having in my body is I want to fly to England and punch somebody in the face. That, again, just normalizing that we all have those feelings. There's some fight energy coming up there. And you know what? One of the things that you have worked on, if I can reflect this,
sure,
that I feel like is so much, you've evolved so much around is as our business has grown, you have started to take on more and more and like not check in with me about it because you know me, you know what I'd say, or, I don't care. And not that I don't care, but like, I trust you to make the decision. And I've been learning that I don't have to hold everything myself, and I'm allowed to actually like use the support of the people who I'm paying a good amount of money to like do their jobs that they're very good at doing. But you've gotten really good at being like, hey, this is what we're going to do. Or like, hey, this isn't working. And here's what I'm going to do instead. And I'm like, okay.
But it's taken time.
I know. And I remember there's several points where I was like, Sarah, tell me, like, I don't know. Tell me what you think is best. And it did. It took some time for you to be like, are you going to yell at me after I give you this suggestion?
Because you're told to sit down and shut up so much in the workplace, right? And when you come into entrepreneurship, there are so many spaces and places where, again, it's, you've got clients who don't understand how to be good leaders. You've got coaches and consultants and masterminds which don't want you to do things differently. There's a status quo to everything. And so there is very little scope for trusting yourself, learning to trust yourself, and learning to actually lean into the expertise that you have and that you're bringing into this space as a business owner. And so one of the things that you do so phenomenally well is create space for that. You create space for people to be like, hey, you know what? I'm actually good at this. And yeah, what I have to say is valuable and I can contribute in a positive way. And if I don't, if it's a dumb suggestion or a suggestion that doesn't work, you're not going to shame me for it. And can I tell you that has been one of the most life-changing experiences for me personally, to be able to say something and not have this constant fear of being called out, shamed, ridiculed, laughed at, which is what happens consistently in a lot of workplaces.
Thank you for that feedback. I'm practicing receiving that. I'm going to even go a step further and work on my humility wound and toot my own horn too, because that is actually one of the biggest pieces of feedback I get is I can say very shamey things to you, things that people would have just made me so wrong for, and you're like, cool, what else you got, right?
Yeah.
And that comes from experiencing a ton of shame myself and going yeah, we're not doing that. That's not what we're doing. And we have a newer team member who just joined, and she came in and I feel like if she had come into the business 3 years ago, I would have been very triggered because I was still very insecure in my own leadership. And her coming in, she's been like, hey, this isn't working and this is broken. And what do you think about doing this? Because this would actually save us time. And she found a bazillion places that we could improve, tweak, fix. And I was so jazzed. I was so stinking excited. And she was like, just tell me if this is too much. I was like, look, here's what's going to happen. You can fire hose information at us. Mm-hmm. What I don't want you to do is tell yourself you're being too much and stop, because what Sarah and I get to do is prioritize what you shared with us, look at what you shared with us, and determine what we are going to work on, what we're not going to work on, what comes first, what goes second. It is not your job to manage us.
Yeah.
And how we interpret or do with what the information you give us.
Yeah.
And so I was like, I said this very clearly. This is something I say to everyone who comes on. I'm like, look, I'm not mad if you make a mistake. I'm not mad if you come to me and tell me that there's something wrong. I'm not mad if you're like, hey, Lee, you screwed this up. This doesn't feel good. You want to know when I get mad? When I find out 2 months after, that something's been messed up and no one's told me. Or somebody's hidden something. Or I get mad when it's almost, and I recognize a little bit of trauma response in me. I'm not even mad at them. I get mad almost at myself when people don't feel safe enough to tell me the thing. That's when I'm going to get frustrated. If we could have fixed something 2 months ago and you didn't say anything.
It's funny. You're listing off, I'm mad when people don't tell me 2 months.
Yeah.
And I'm telling you, it's a trauma response. Immediately my brain's going, what didn't I tell her? Did something go wrong?
No, but it's not even the case at all. But our team doesn't do that. What I actually say is, you are doing a great job. You are doing your job when you tell me those things. Yeah. And that is part of your job description.
I have made so many mistakes, so many mistakes. And the thing is, the very first mistake I made, I can't even remember what it was at this point, but I remember making it. It was probably an email went wrong, or I didn't do a thing, or I missed something. And the fear, the palatable fear I had of I'm going to lose this client. She's going to think I'm an idiot. She's not going to renew my contract. It was just all those things going through your head. And it was insane that you did not respond that way. I could not compute that you did not respond that way the first time it happened. And now every time I make a mistake, it's getting easier, because the thing is, I'm human. I'm not going to stop making mistakes completely. I do my best. But now it's crap. Okay, sorry, I'll fix it. And it doesn't completely hijack my day. I don't lose sleep over it anymore the way that I used to, because I will never forget the very first, there were a number of them, but I remember the very first big mistake I made in my last job, and how there were two very, very different responses to it, right? One was the manager I had at the time. She was actually a really good human, and she was a great manager. She pulled me in and was like, you effed up. Basically what I had done is I had sent a "you've graduated" email to a student who did not graduate. And I had to pull that. Yeah, I had to pull that all back. Yeah. And so she was like, not good. We're going to have to, call the student in and get them to sign papers, and HR's involved and stuff. I'm like, okay. Felt really bad, but she was very good at like, it's fine. Like, we will fix it. And the other response from her boss was, you now have to have all of your spreadsheets and information double and triple checked by these two people. You are not allowed to send any more communications without CCing me in on them. So two very different responses. And I love the idea of, creating that space of like, you're allowed, like, acknowledging the fact that sometimes these things happen, especially when you have a track record of doing most things pretty okay. Right?
Yeah.
And so we see this a lot. We see this a lot in entrepreneurship, particularly with people who've, suddenly hired a team member for the first time, maybe. Mm-hmm. When that team member makes a mistake, it's like suddenly they're questioning this person's competence and, should I have them on, they shouldn't be doing this kind of thing. Or the other end of the spectrum of like, I'm going to hire this person and they're going to fix everything. We're not going to have a conversation about it. They should just know, because that's what they've been hired to do. And if they don't immediately do that, then they are somehow at fault.
Or did you ever work in a setting where the manager, we've talked about threat responses on here, the manager's chronic pattern of dysregulation is fawning or people pleasing, and somebody is consistently showing you that they are not right for the job, and yet that manager does not fire them, does not correct them, does not tell them. And you're like, great, I got to do two jobs because this person's not doing their job right, but like nobody cares.
All of academia.
I know.
Because you cannot fire a teacher. Oh my God.
Oh gosh, yes. Oh, I still get anxious thinking about the annual promotion things. Anyway, but like, also if you're hiring on team, sometimes you end up being that boss, right? And this is something else I want to say. I'm not y'all's boss. All of the people at the Institute, like, their team. I'm not their boss. And I am the leader of my business. And they are the leader of their businesses. So that's also something that if you are hiring people who are independent contractors, they are not employees, they are not W-2 humans. You need to treat them as such.
They work with you, not for you.
They work with you, not for you, right? Know the difference. And also, even if somebody comes in, because now that the Institute is growing, what we do is we basically ask people, do you want to be an independent contractor or do you want to be a W-2 employee? And what I say is the only difference is taxes. Like, you're going to be treated the same because, again, yes, I am the leader of the Institute. I am not your quote unquote boss. But like, I see this with a lot of my clients. They'll really struggle to be like, well, this person keeps messing up, but I don't want to make them feel bad. And I'm like, when people feel really bad is when they think they've done a good job because you've told them they've done a good job a bunch of times, and then you randomly fire them out of the blue because they've actually been messing up for 6 months and you never said anything.
It blindsides them. It's completely unfair. And then the rest of the team who sees that, they constantly hide things now too, right?
Yeah.
Or they overcompensate. Yes.
Yeah. What's been so fascinating to me is, one of the things with trauma and the residue and the aftermath that it leaves is that when you go through something and somebody shows up in a specific way towards you, right? Somebody shows up in a more like empowered, domineering way, or they show up in this more like fawning, people-pleasing, freezy way. We do one of two things. We either adopt the same behaviors or we do the exact opposite. So we either mirror them or we become them. So if people are in corporate and they have a boss that is really demanding, really strict, really punitive, one of two things I see generally happens when they then become their own boss. They either unknowingly become very strict and punitive and demanding towards themselves and towards their employees, or they go, I never want to be like that person. So what is the exact opposite?
Yeah.
And either way, you're just like swinging too far in either direction instead of saying like, okay, yes, I definitely want to be kinder. I want to be more compassionate. I want to be more understanding. I want to give people more leeway. And I also want to hold people accountable. I also want to make sure that people understand that they are expected to do the work that we've both agreed they're going to do. And also having integrity with yourself of, it's like what you said before, do what you say you're going to do. And if you don't do what you say you're going to do, that's fine. Communicate that.
Yes. That's a big thing that's missing. Communication.
I'm going to put you on the spot here. So you are the backbone of this event, this transformation event we're putting on next week.
Mm-hmm.
The 5 ways to trauma-proof your business. You are the human who's set up all the emails, all the landing pages, anything behind the scenes. And you are also, because I think this is really important for people to know, this event is leading to a big launch for us, a big thing that we are opening up. So for anyone who's been listening, I think actually 2 episodes ago, I was like, we're launching the mini mind again. And of course, the day after I recorded that episode, I'm having like all these downloads. I was like, nope, it's not called the mini mind anymore. The format's changing. We're doing all these things. And I was like, should I go back and fix the podcast episode? And I was like, nope, forget it. We'll fix it later. So I came to you a few weeks ago and I said, hey, what if we really shift this to what we're now calling the Trauma Sensitive Business Collective? And I remember you literally wrote back in Voxer, you were like, choose. Yes, this is what we're doing. And one of the things I'm really excited about is that this is, a lot of people who listen to this know, yes, trauma is that is the place that I will be for a very long time. And business mindset was like my first love in coaching. Yeah. And one of the things I recognized is that like operationally, that's not my zone of genius. It's my zone of excellence, competence. The other day you were busy and I threw together a Canva PDF. Like I'd give it a solid B-. Like it worked, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what we're going to be doing with this collective is you get to actually come in and really show people like, hey, this is how, yes, the Institute is a trauma sensitive, well, it's really a trauma informed business, but it's a trauma sensitive business, both on the front end with what Lee's doing and also on the back end with what I'm doing. So I guess my question for you is, I talk a lot about front end, the client and the consumer experience and the business owner's experience in terms of like sales and marketing and messaging and coaching and all those things. Why do you think it's important, talking about how most entrepreneurs have come from this corporate space, have come from this traumatic space? Why do you think it's important to know how to run a trauma-sensitive business on the operations, the back end side?
Because the back end influences the front end, right? The back end is going to have a knock-on effect on the customer experience. That's one aspect of it. So, for example, how you respond to late payments, how you set up your email sequences for, payment reminders. It's just like one small example.
Yes. Okay. Can you share how you used to kind of do payment reminders and how we shifted to doing them in a more trauma sensitive way at the Institute?
Yes. So before it was very, you have a payment due in 3 days. Please refer to your invoice and make it. Or you are now 10 days overdue. Please remit payment immediately. Like it was very corporate speak because that's all we'd ever experienced. And we've since shifted to, make it very clear in our emails that yes, you do have a payment due. And yes, we would love it if you could please pay it. And if you're struggling, reach out and let us know. and we will work with you to figure out a payment plan or a situation that is mutually agreeable to both of us. Because from a money perspective, you've talked about it before, there's huge trauma around money. It's very triggering. And if you're trying to create on the front end a very positive experience for your clients, and you're holding space for them to feel vulnerable and feel supported and seen, and then you're sending emails from your business, which maybe your team is putting together or whatever, and they're very punitive or they're very shamey or they're, it sends mixed messages, right? And it's the same thing with one of the other areas that we've both started looking at recently is contracts, like your legal wording and how your contracts are put together. That's another place where if you're just using like a contract template, or you haven't really stopped to consider what your contracts are saying to your clients, again, there could be a miscommunication or a mismatch in what they're seeing from the front end from you and what's happening in the back end from your team. So this is something that I think a lot of people don't think about. They think about, okay, in my social media, I'm going to be very trauma informed and I'm going to say all the right things and do all the right things. But on the back end, is your business helping you walk the walk? Is the actual operational piece helping support what you are talking about publicly? Because I'll tell you now, a lot of businesses are not. And it's not because they aren't doing it intentionally. It's just they don't know. It's not something they think about.
Okay, I got chills this time. Thank you for returning them my direction. Yeah. Are you walking your walk? Because so many of us are so focused on, am I delivering a good service? Am I delivering a good product? Am I showing up, me, especially coaching, right? Like, am I coaching this person the way they need it? And, we actually had this happen yesterday. I communicated with a client. I was like, okay, these are our next, they were renewing their contract. I was like, great. I sent you the contract information. They actually responded back and they were like, hey, these terms technically are right. And according to our last contract, they're kind of wrong. And I just want to clarify. And she's like, I actually fully trust you that even if I sign this one, it's going to happen the way it's supposed to. And like, is this right? And I was so excited, number one, because like, how scary is that? How scary is it to come to somebody and say, I really want to keep working with you. And also like, you messed this up.
You messed up.
Right.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, yeah, nope, that was my bad. Let me take it to team. And then I went to you and I was like, hey, I messed this up. Can we fix it? And it was just this like totally nonchalant process that I feel like in so many other businesses would just be full of activation and maybe, the client would have just ghosted and not signed the contract, or they would have signed it and then like felt like they were people pleasing. And so it was just nice to be able to have it be sensitive.
And from an operations perspective, from a back end perspective as well, like that, again, that's growth that in myself, I'm very aware of because of the work that we've done together, the work that you do, the work I see you do, the work I've done myself. If that was a team member saying, hey, I messed this up, how are you? So as operations director, I manage your team, right? I'm responsible for their well-being and their happiness and their satisfaction, working as part of the Institute. And if one of them had said, hey, I made a mistake on this, another reason why you need to be trauma sensitive in the back end of your business is how do you actually respond to that? Because the CEO is not always going to respond to team, right? Once your team starts to grow, you're not going to have that day-to-day input. So if your team is not trauma trained, if your team is not trauma sensitive, or if they are not understanding how you want things to take place back, behind the scenes in the backstage, you can very quickly damage any kind of credibility, any kind of trust relationship that you have with your team because they weren't treated well, because it's not just about the customer journey. And so many people hire a team member thinking they're going to solve all my problems without really understanding the work that you need to do as a manager, as a supervisor of a team, as just another human holding space for these people to feel safe. We have a Voxer chat with the support team, and it's incredible because we're all in there. We all hold space for each other, and they can fully say, look, this didn't work. This is screwing up. Does anybody have, and there's no sort of like, oh, you're such an idiot, or, oh my God, that person's so incompetent. Like none of that happens. And it's so beautiful because it happened all the time in corporate. Someone would leave the room and you're like, oh my God, do you know that person's such an incompetent tool or whatever? It was something people bonded over, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I love that when you create a business that is trauma informed or trauma sensitive or just even trauma aware, all of that goes away. And there's this like seamlessness from the front end through to the back end, and then it comes full circle. And so, yeah, that is why I think it is so, so important to do this work, not just client facing, but looking at the operations piece as well.
Thank you for that. And this is why I was like, I could teach this. Nope, Sarah's teaching this because, Sarah gets to bring her expertise into this because honestly, I mean, it is so your zone of genius to be able to do those things. And I feel so safe coming to you and saying, I've messed up. I also feel very safe coming to you and saying, hey, you messed up. And like, it really just doesn't, there's no charge with it. To be fair, can I share the story from this week?
Yeah, do it.
Okay. So earlier this week, something that I've started doing is hosting an all client call. So like anyone who's bought anything from us can hop on this one-time monthly call and join us. And so last week I was sick. And so we had to send out, hey, Lee can't get out of bed. We'll reschedule this for next week. And we had a lot of other stuff going on. I didn't check. You didn't check. And so I hop on this week on Zoom going like, okay, I'm going to have this all client call. Now there's like almost 300 people that are invited to this call, y'all. So like 5 minutes in, no one's on except my husband, of course. And he's like, I'm like, oh, nobody wants coaching. And he's like, I do not think that is what's happening. But notice my initial response is, nobody wants coaching from me. That literally doesn't make sense.
Mm-hmm.
So he's like, I think this is a tech issue, babe. So I like hopped in the back end and I was like, oh yeah, we didn't send a reminder email. And so I Voxered you, Sarah, and you were like, fuck. And I was like, it's okay. Actually, I'm kind of excited about this because I got other stuff I got to do. So now I can like record this video that I've been putting off getting to you and, all these things. But what I loved is you were like, I'm going to go cry and then I'll be back. And I was like, yes, like go have your feelings around it. I'm here when you want to, like when you're ready, come back and we'll get it sorted. I didn't say, no, don't feel bad. It's fine. I didn't like fawn or people please you out of like, I was like, you are allowed to have your feelings around this. And I'm really like not that mad. I actually turned to, my husband came upstairs because, I wasn't on the call anymore. And I was like, I feel like I should be mad about this, but like, I'm just like not, I'm not even because I truly believe it all works out. And I knew the week you were having, and I really enjoyed that interaction because I was like, I want to just, I wish I could have had a camera on both of us real time and put that up as a reason to like, come join the business collective so that this is how your business can feel.
Absolutely. And two things I want to say to that. Like, number one, thank you so much for letting me have my feelings. Because literally every other experience I have in my life is genuinely like, oh, no, it's okay. Don't like it's, it happens. And I mean, I do that sometimes with my own kids. Like, it's okay. It's like, no, have your feelings. Because we're allowed to have our feelings. And how many times have we been told to like shove your feelings down and don't feel the thing? So that was like a huge, like, I love that about our relationship. It's like, yeah, go and cry, go punch things. It's fine. Not people, things. But also just like understanding, again, going back to the operations piece, going back to the team piece, right? My experience has been people do not fuck up on purpose. They do not do it out of malice. They do not do it out of, I'm going to wake up and make people's day miserable today. Like there's usually shit going on in the background. And like you said, you knew the week the 2 weeks that I've been having, there's a lot going on at home. There's a lot going on in my like, it's just, there's a lot going on. And so understanding that your team isn't trying to sabotage you when something goes wrong or they forget to do something, it's probably one of those moments where you got to be like, look, is everything okay? Like, do you need to back off of things? Do you need space? Do you need to take some time away? Can we support you? not you
Yes.
fucked up. Like, you're an idiot. I'm giving your job to
That
somebody
part.
else. Yeah.
That part. And you know, y'all did that for me when we brought on Shannon, our newest hire. We still haven't figured out what her role is called. Chief
She's the
nurture or
chief
something.
everything officer. She's
Yeah.
beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah, she's our hodgepodge like human, which is great. But we were on a meeting talking about what she was going to take over and what she was going to help with. And y'all on that meeting were like, okay, Lee's coming out of the emails. Lee's coming out of the Voxer leadership chat. We're taking all these things away. Like, that's how it felt. Like, we're taking all these things away because literally during that meeting, I started crying because of how overwhelmed I felt.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt safe to do that because it wasn't like this, I'm not damseling falling apart, but I was able to be very honest with the team and saying, like, I need more support. And these are humans that will provide that support and be compensated by for that support and enjoy providing that support. And I'm allowed to receive that. And I'm not going to lie to you. It was really hard. I still want to get in the emails. I still check them every now and then.
I know you do.
See. I try to like mark it read and unread super fast. But my own process for that has been, I'm in there 90% less than I used to be. And honestly, just having everything go through, this has been an evolution of the business. And y'all, I tell you what, if you have trauma around like the levels of leadership, like in MLM, they always talk the pyramid, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you have issues with that, if you have traumatic experiences around that, I promise you that when your business grows and there's a human that you trust, that you're like, okay, you're going to take care of things that I know nothing about. For some people, it's, oh my gosh, can I actually trust people to do it at the level I would? That's not mine. I validate anyone who has that. You know, are they going to do it like me? No, that's actually not what I care about. What I care about is like, are people going to think less of me that I'm not doing everything?
Right.
And that's from my experience of if I quote unquote remove myself from this, am I putting myself on a pedestal like the team can't reach? And no, that's not it. Every single team member knows that if there's something that they want to speak directly to me about, they are more than welcome to do that. You are not a quote unquote gatekeeper to me. And team also really respects that I'm off doing things that when I'm getting interrupted 20, 30 times a day, I can't do, that it actually makes more sense to go to Sarah because they're going to get an answer way faster. They're going to get a better answer and it's going to make everybody's lives easier.
Yeah.
So the question I've been thinking of is like that I want to answer for people is why would I join a trauma sensitive business collective? And the reason is because almost every business mastermind I have been in does not address this. It doesn't look at how do you actually set things up so they feel spacious and safe and mutually beneficial for three groups of people: the business owner, the team, and the people you're serving. And we already have a cohort of 9 women who went through the first one. 8 of them are returning or did return, and 8 of them are continuing on because they're like, this is just such a breath of fresh air and it makes it so much easier to run a business and be successful in this business, knowing that I've set it up to be like, I've gotten myself out of the pool.
Yes. The pee-pee pool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm out of the pee-pee pool at the hotel and I've walked, a block away and I'm at the beach, like sipping a mocktail with my toes in the sand in the ocean. Like, this is so much better over here.
Yeah.
So I just want to invite anyone who's listening in to come to the free event. We started yesterday. If you have been around me at all, you know that I do not believe that there is such a thing as being behind. So you were meant to join today. If you're hearing this today, even if this is later, check out the link in the show notes. And I want to send you an invite to join Sarah and I in the Trauma Sensitive Business Collective, because it really, for the price too, and for just like what you are going to get out of that space, I mean, I'm biased, but I think it's probably the best investment you'll make as a business owner all year.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because you are going to be able to finally run a business that feels right for you.
Yeah.
Right? Because you're going to learn what you need to do and how you need to tweak. And you're going to be given the space and the support to develop things in a way that aligns with who you are as a human being and not how you're told to or how it should be done or how you think it should be done. And there is nothing more liberating than that feeling. Because what you'll find too is there's less resistance to things in your business because they're not rubbing up against values that you didn't realize you had or that you've never been able to acknowledge before.
Yeah. You're removing the cognitive dissonance too of like, I'm doing this thing that I don't think it's right, doesn't feel right, but I'm being told it's right. Or I'm not doing this thing that feels wrong, but I'm being told to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And also, I don't know a lot of business mastermind collective spaces that hit both of these.
Yes.
That hit the back end and the front end, because people who run business masterminds are typically good at one or the other.
Mm-hmm.
And so y'all are getting like twice the bang for your buck because you have two humans who are really good at both. You have both getting covered.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm really freaking excited about it.
Me too.
And I think the coolest part also is I feel like most other masterminds too are not created for people who are either like just starting business or 7 figures or beyond, like with big teams. And the way that we've set this up is if the first day of your business is the day you join the collective, or you've been in business for 10 years and you have a whole team and you have a whole, like, you already have back end and front end set up, but it doesn't actually feel that good to you, or you've listened to this and gone like, wow, like I'm not being a good boss to myself. I'm not being a kind boss to other people. I'm being too kind. You still get to fit because we've set it up in a way that wherever you're at in your business, you get to look at how this applies. And I also don't see that other places where it's safe to come in and swim in the same water, to keep the analogy going, as people who are in very different places. You get to be with people who are in a similar space to you, and then you also get to connect with everyone. And really, sometimes it's really great as a person who's been in business for a long time to hear a newbie ask a question and be like, oh, when's the last time I thought about that? And maybe that's something I need to look at. Yeah. Or like, oh, wow, like maybe I actually need to look at that again because I haven't thought about that in years.
Yeah.
Or, and I'll just say this, you can just reach out straight to Sarah. If you're like, Lee, I don't want to work with you and I just want to work with Sarah, I'm not offended. You know me. Sarah would tell you if this was a lie. I'm not offended. Also, just like go hire Sarah because she's freaking brilliant. And if you're like, I don't need the front. Yeah. If you're like, I just want back end help. I don't want front end help. Like hire her. And I've joked with Sarah before that I almost have a hard time promoting her because I'm afraid someone's going to steal her. And
oh, I'm not going anywhere. Don't worry.
I know that now. I feel fully trusting that you're not going anywhere. And at the beginning, I was like, she's so good. She's going to leave.
Can I like last, what I'll say is I think I'm confident in saying that. Like I'm confident in saying I'm not going anywhere. Yeah. Not as a platitude, not as like, oh, that's what you say. It's because for the first time in my entire career, I can honestly say I truly, truly believe in the mission of the Institute and your mission and your vision. And I don't remember ever having an experience where I was like just so fully on board with something because it was so fucking important. So you're stuck with me.
That's fine. Sarah's just going to make me cry at the very end of this. You can't make me have feelings. I am going to produce tears in response to this lovely thing that you just said. There we go. I fixed my language. Okay. We've been talking forever and it's so good. So Sarah's going to come back on at one point. Sarah's going to come back on more than at one point because Sarah's amazing. And if you want to follow her, learn more about her, head to the show notes, check her stuff out. And if you want to join us for our free transformation event, 5 ways to Trauma-proof your business, or if you just want to hop in the collective, check out the link below. And we're excited to connect with you.
Yes, we are.
Thanks for coming on and just like shooting the shit with me.
Anytime, bestie.
Okay.
I appreciate you.
Yeah. All right. Bye, y'all.
Bye.
Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. Invitation to head to our show notes to check out the offers and connections we mentioned. Or you can just head straight over to institutefortrauma.com and hop in our email list so that you never miss any of the cool things that we're doing over at the Institute. Invitation to be well and to take care of yourself this week, and we'll see you next time.